Hello and welcome. Yeah.
That's wrong.
This is the wrong head.
No. This is the closer one, babe.
Back in 2019, we spent the year building out our schoolie. After the build was done, we sold our house and traveled for a full year. Following that year of travel, we started to crave building again and getting something 4x4. So since we're your friend, we decided to add a table of contents. In case you don't want to watch this entire video, we know this is longer than what we usually do, but there was so much going on, it's pretty hard to cut down major parts of the engine.
We have a turbo up on me, and we're gonna take it apart and rebuild the turbo. This is a 1995 Turb Ski out of a van, and the previous owner welded these holes shut. There's normally a little valve that goes through here, hooked up to this solenoid, and it is for closing this off, and I believe that is a temperature thing, so that way it can create more temperature in the cold. Previous owner lived in California, and I guess took that off because it's supposed to add with power and blah blah blah. We're working with what we have because I do not want to buy a new turbo, and in the future I'm sure I could always buy a new housing. Anyways, I have taken this turbo apart already just to check out the parts I need to order, and I have those parts now, and I am grabbing the tools we will need. I'm gonna get my little chromes on my impact here, and we have our box over here. With our parts. So I went with Casey Turbos, that's the brand. Nailed it. So this is a rebuild kit, comes with a bunch of O-rings, a couple screws, and other things I don't know how to name. Also, the main thing it came with are these lovely turbines. So we have, this is the full wheel and everything already pre-balanced. Which if you're not buying a pre-balanced one, I don't know what you're doing. Anyways, basically we're gonna just pull this sucker apart, pull out the old turbine and the old parts and replace them with the new turbine and the new parts. As simple as that. Maybe I'll polish this a little just to make it look fancy. The reason why I'm using my little chrome impact is because these are 12 points and I don't have 12-point impact sockets. Start by taking off the bottom, and I'm just gonna set this aside. I'm imagining, yeah, we have new O-rings for that. Okay, so now we'll take off the turbine wheel. You know, just break that off, and then it comes right off. That. Now we have 4 more screws. All of these are pretty much the same screws. I say pretty much because not all of them. Now, important, there's this little shwoobop on the bottom. Our kit comes with the replacement, but it doesn't matter which direction this goes and how it goes. Keep that in mind. I'm just gonna leave that on there right now. Again, I have no idea what the name of any of these parts are, so that's why I called it a shwoobop. Just being honest. So we're gonna go ahead and take these, and I'm just gonna put a coat of black paint on them just to make them look a little cute. Because we are doing this work, we might as well
Make them look cute.
Make them look cute. So we're gonna just wire wheel these and then spray them black rather than polishing, because that takes forever and black paint is fast. So I'm gonna take these outside and do it, so that way we don't get a bunch of schmuck in our important stuff. So I'm just putting a coat of engine enamel on all this stuff here. This tan color is probably gonna get really dirty really fast, but this is like the color we're doing most of our van with. It'll look nice when we put it on initially. This is high heat. Okay, we have the Turbo's Royal Pedestal here. We got all our parts painted up, and they had overnight to dry. Turned out awesome. So we're gonna assemble this oil side. I already popped out these 2 little pieces. We have 2 little collars with holes in here. Hexagonal collar. Like I said, I have no idea what any of this stuff is called. I'm just kind of winging it, I guess. This kit comes with this lovely plastic tray with all the parts neatly organized. We are gonna go ahead and go through this, rebuild our turbo. Because there's O-rings, I'm gonna already just grab a pick out. We have an O-ring around the top of this guy, which is our flat O-ring. Just set that in. We're making great progress, folks. So now, the one thing is there's way more O-rings in here than I am even seeing on the vehicle, or on the turbo. So this turbo has been rebuilt in the past. I'm guessing they didn't rebuild it with the kit, or I don't know about rebuilt, but taken apart. Rather than using an O-ring to seal this housing, there's just RTV in there, and I haven't cleaned this out fully. We're gonna get rid of that RTV. It looks like we have one large O-ring here. I already replaced that one O-ring. I have the parts, like a section for old O-rings. 2 of these are gonna be for the pedestal. We do have 2 snap ring type deals, which I'm assuming go in here. Look at that turbine wheel. Look how much better that looks.
Than that one?
This side. Well, one, like the actual fins.
They're so much closer together.
They're closer, they're larger. Right. Basically, it's gonna take our exhaust and spin that wheel, that fan, like turbine blade even faster. So like you can see how these are connected. So how a turbo works is this is your exhaust side that I'm working on now. So it's sitting in there like this. And your exhaust comes in from here and it spins this turbine wheel, spinning this wheel, and because they're different wheels, it's kind of like a gear reduction. So it takes in less air and produces more air. And that's going in your motor creating more exhaust. Super easy actually to rebuild a turbo. So if you can rebuild an injector, you can definitely rebuild a turbo. We're just gonna get a couple more O-rings on. I'm using some copper Loctite, or anti-seize rather, bolts on here so that way next time it comes off, if it needs to come off, it's not gonna be seized on. That's kind of just a general rule when you're rebuilding stuff. So we're gonna take our O-ring here. In this tray, I just put some oil to help me out. So this is a universal kit for all the 7.3 turbos, and they changed this housing in their newer years. So that's why there's a bunch of different random O-rings in here. It took me a second to realize that. I was like, oh great, I'm missing a ton of parts. And we have our exhaust side, and then this will point forward towards the front of the motor. And then we'll just take our screws here. And you can tell which ones are exhaust and which ones aren't, because see how they're like kind of burnt. So like that's a good one. These 3 are pretty good, are not exhaust, and then that one's exhaust.
And that's it. That's pretty much turbo rebuilt, yeah?
Now we have the high pressure oil pump. We have everything off, and so I'm rebuilding it. So rather than buying a new one for like 400 bucks, a new remanufactured for 400, or a new one for like 1,000, I bought this little seal kit for 14 bucks. So we are going to be replacing the IPR here because the other one was missing the hat and the nut, but I ended up finding that in the valley of the motor, go figure. So more than likely that is the cause of all of our problems. One of our commenters actually let me know that there was the solenoid on here. I thought it was missing the solenoid. It was on here, and when we pulled off the fuel filter, the solenoid came off, but we did not take off the nut or the hat. So that solenoid was just free floating in here. So I'm sure if I reached down there and just adjusted that solenoid, the motor would have been running great, and we might not have been rebuilding it now, but I'm happy we're rebuilding it. It needed it. We'll have a spare IPR after this and a new one on here. What I'm going to start with first is just cracking open all these screws, getting all the little oil out. Now, I have no idea what I'm doing, disclaimer, with anything. I kind of just pretend like it. Here we go. That front gear on here and that nut, and I just have them set here. We're gonna want the skull crushers. Watch, make sure we don't pinch our fingers off. Here, I'm gonna get some assembly lube. Oh, like a charm. So I don't know if this has ever been rebuilt or how long it's been sitting in there. That is the reason why I am rebuilding this, really. Good progress, good progress. I have no idea how this comes out. Let me inspect what came in our kit. So I ordered this from Riff Raff Diesel Performance. placed an order there, not rocket surgery. I'm curious, there's a piece of paper in here. I wonder if it's like a instruction manual. That'd be cool. So we got some mysterious green fluid, a couple O-rings. I'm guessing we're gonna be replacing the ones on these plugs. We have one big O-ring, which I'm guessing is gonna be on the back here. We had a ball come out. That check ball came from inside somewhere. I'm guessing right at the bottom of this. Pressure wash this thing, so there's some water coming out. So I'm gonna make sure I clean this thing and air it out and all that jazz. So I'm gonna look at these because it was saying that these O-rings are the same size but different hardnesses. So I need to read this diagram and see which O-ring goes where. It's nice we're doing all these seals and stuff because you know how it leaked, but we had no idea where from because it seemed like it just leaked everywhere. These O-rings don't seem to be very dried out. Might as well replace them while we're in here. And plus, I don't care if they're dried out. Cylinders put back in today. It sat kind of open just in here, so I'm just gonna do a pretty thorough cleaning on everything and get off any like grime and stuff, so that way when we put the cylinders back in, we have new bearings that I took to a machine shop and they checked for tolerance and they're all good. We're gonna slap them back in today. So any part that I put on pretty much will have assembly lube. We don't want the cylinders to go in and out all dry. And this stuff is just super sticky. I mean, like, when have you ever seen lubricant like that? It's like snot. Get some of that in the cylinders. The cylinder number 1 piston in place. I'll show you the other side on the cylinder number 2. I just wanted to do this one off camera so that way I could figure it out and not have to worry. So I put the new bearings in and I'm using assembly lube. And basically what I'm doing here is you can see it's all around our cam here, or crank, sorry. And then I read through the manual we have and it says that 1, we need to make sure that these are facing the correct direction. On the cylinders, on these rod ends, there is a bearing, a chamfer on one side that's much larger than the other side that has to always be pointing the crank, the walls of the crankshaft. I'm certain that this one's pointing on that way, and then as well to double check that these are the right direction. There's stamps here, so those stamp marks will line up with each other, and that's how you know that the chamfer is on the correct side, like this cap's not spun around. Now I took some of my assembly lube and I'm just gonna hand tighten them. And I'm just gonna drop it. Always keep a magnet handy for that reason. So, gosh darn it. I really dropped it this time. I don't know where that went. Spin the motor around and see if it'll come out. There we are. There's one side of these nuts, because these are just the old ones that are worn. So I'm just gonna make sure to put that down. Now I just have an extension on my impact. Just speeding up the process. Now I have a fuller gauge at 0.012 of an inch or 0.30 millimeters, and that needs to go in right here, and we need to ensure that we have the proper spacing all the way around. I don't have this impact set hard enough where it's actually gonna tighten anything down too much, so you can see that we still have some wiggle room here. So we're going to 71 first. Okay, now we're at 95 foot-pounds. Worried that these might be the wrong bearings. I'm not sure why those are moving back and forth like that. So then this third one's 108. I think these are the wrong bearings. I couldn't see why that would move like that. I'm gonna go ahead and put in cylinder number 2, but with the old bearings and see if we have that same wiggle, because if we do, then these are the wrong bearings. That means this crank might have been machined and I didn't even notice. According to my book here, we want this top ring facing in like the 10 o'clock, then the middle ring facing in like the 2, and then the bottom ring at the 6 o'clock. That's how our ring positions go. I need to grab, so I actually haven't set the ring in yet. So I put assembly lube on the underside of this and then on the top side as well. In the manual it calls for just motor oil, but I'm using assembly lube because I feel crazy. So there's like some coolant recesses under there. They need to be careful not to snap when you put the cylinder in. These little tubes right in there. That little tube, you need to make sure you're not going to hit that with the rod end when you put it in there. So now we take our compressor here, our piston compressor. I'm gonna just check my O-rings, and then we seat this all the way up against the head. Get it nice and tight. Take the back of a soft hammer. So this is just a framing hammer, but it's got a nice rubber end. And then we just tap it in. Really that simple. So now, it shouldn't just fall out of there. I say shouldn't, but no certainty in that. We're going to flip the motor over, and I just hold my hand, make sure it doesn't fall out. So why I'm flipping it over is so that way I can pound it in to get to this guy here, so I can make sure I'm not hitting anything. There we are. So that's cylinder 2. So I'm double checking with my eye to make sure that chamfer is on the correct side. I didn't take off these rods or put them any back on, so they should in theory be fine, but of course always double check. So just a little bit of lube on there. Then we're gonna take the other side of our rod. Now I'm just taking a microfiber and wiping everything off, get all the little imperfections off. So I put the side with the groove in, and then I can just push the other side in. I already have this on the shaft, but I'll put a little on here just for good measures. Last thing we want is for it to dry start. Okay, so big chamfer to the side, and then you can double check that by stamp marks here. The old bearings on this and the new ones on here, I've measured everything, and this crankshaft shouldn't have been machined down. I'm just making sure that the little wobble they have is supposed to be. I can't see in my manual if it's like, allow this much wobble or whatnot. And then again, we're gonna just set our torque to 71 to start. It does have some wiggle room still, even all torqued. So that's good peace of mind. So I'm going to go ahead and put a filler gauge in, 0.30 millimeters on the sides. Okay, we're good. Now I'm actually gonna take this off. Okay, now I'll put the new bearings on. That was just double checking for my peace of mind. We got lube on everything. Everything looks good. Okay, 2 cylinders down, let's move on. So how I know is these cylinders are actually shifted forward. So as you can see, this head sits flush here where this one sits back. So one always starts here forward. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth. So we're gonna take our piston here. I'm gonna spray it off, engine clean, and then blow it off and all that jazz. Back to the engine. So on these, right here it says like cam side, 1, 2, 3, so we need to be over here actually. Gently slide these in, watching our oil doodad. Top one that direction, middle one that way, and then the bottom oil ring since facing all the way down. Flip it on over. So again, just double checking our chamfer, then matching our chamfer up, and then triple checking with our stamps. And then back to our torque spec, 71, and 95, finishing it off at 108. Okay, so we have all the pistons back in, how they came out. So I actually labeled them in 3 places, on the end cap, on the connecting rod, and on the piston, just in case one rubbed off. And on a lot of them, they did rub off. So I'm glad I did that. But I got all 8 of them in, and I can even see on the connecting rod, they're in the correct order. And then everything torqued down, and I went ahead and retorqued all of these camshaft caps, or whatever you'd call them, just to make sure, because I'm here. I probably should have done this before, but I don't have the wheel. I'm gonna go get a cleaning wheel so that way I can clean the bottom surface here and just get all the grime off, like mating surface for the new oil pan. So we are gonna be putting a new oil pan on. The other one had a big old dent in it from hitting a rock or something. So went ahead and got a new one. That'll sit on here, and then we're waiting for valves. That should come in either today or tomorrow. And then we'll get the heads put back together. The injectors are pretty much done. One injector, I am missing one teeny little part. I think it fell on the floor because I was waiting for other parts, and in the process, I think of the great shift of moving everything, that part fell on the floor somewhere. But so I'm gonna go ahead and order another one of those. Then the heads will go back together, and in the meantime, I clean up like the front assembly, the rear assembly. At some point here, I'm gonna actually need to take this whole motor, and I'll probably actually do this last. But I have a new rear main seal and a new rear main, or like rear gasket, that's gonna be going on the back here. So I'll do that. Fronts all got new seals. I went ahead and got a gasket set for this entire motor, so every single gasket on this motor is gonna be new. I'm sure this thing's gonna leak, but I'd like it to leak as little as possible. I mean, it's a 7.3 in the end of the day, but we're just rebuilding everything, going through everything, double checking, measuring, being as tedious as I can to hopefully try to get this thing like a brand new motor with some old parts in it. That's pretty much where I'm at. I went to the store and I got some Scotch-Brite pads here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and lightly clean the surface and get all of the gasket off, and I'm gonna do that to the heads as well. Okay, so I'm taking out the injector cups. I ordered a kit. It comes with this like tap situation, and the injector cups sit right inside here where you put the injectors, and this is what they look like. So what we're basically doing is we're gonna tap the inside of them. These are brass cups, so we're gonna run the tap through and create threads, and then this little guy here is like a puller. So we're on the 3rd one. I'm using Assembly Lube as my thread lube, I guess. So we're just gonna put it in there and start it like any other tap, and then take our impact, slide that bitch in, and then I just take it out the shavings. We do want to go in pretty deep. I mean, we're basically bottoming this out in those injector cups. Take it off. I just have some pliers and grab this upper ring here. If you grab down here, you'll pinch the tap and it's not going to want to come out. And I'll set that aside. For the time being, I'll prep everything. So this is the head we're working on. Basically what I did is I took a Scotch-Brite on a drill and cleaned the whole head surface because it still had like gasket on it from the head gasket. And we're gonna be putting in some new valves, only exhaust valves, because the old ones are pitted pretty bad. We're gonna keep our intake side. We're just cleaning them off with a wire wheel. And then we are going to take some valve grinding compound and grind these valves in. So we have a valve stem seal that is clearly torn that needs to be replaced, but the parts for those won't come in until Monday. So it's a hard call on what to do. I mean, Monday's in 3 days, so it's not that far away. And I can work on other things. heat exchanger, technically called a oil cooler, but that's what it does. It exchanges heat. Too much, and I lost the bolt. Oh, here she is. Copy. We'll start by just getting a couple threads on by hand on every single one of these. And I'm gonna set this at the lightest setting. So now I'm gonna go ahead and reference my little bookie over there, and we're gonna do some torque specs for the oil cooler. Oil pickup, oil pan, oil cooler plug, oil cooler to cylinder block. There was nothing there. What? Okay, so what we'll do is just come over here. Those are 1/4 inch bolts, 14 foot-pounds. So there's a little set screw on the bottom that locks it in. On this side, there's foot-pounds. So it starts at 10, and then there's little notches on this. So we can start at 10 there, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, back to 0. And now we're at 20. So we're gonna go to 14, and then we twist that, and it sets it so that way you can't twist the handle anymore. I'd like to tighten a little on one side, go tighten a little, and then you can barely hear it, but watch the handle move. See how much it moves? Mm-hmm. So this handle, whenever you have the correct foot-pound, it gives.
Gasket maker. Understood.
So I ordered like a kit that came with all these seals, front and rear main seals and stuff. And it came with this giant tube of industrial gasket maker. Mall JV10 aluminum silicone sealant, which it smells like it's gonna be better than regular stuff because it burns your frickin' nose. So there's 2 little pins here that this will sit on. Ooh. And then we have, there's one seal that goes right here, and it actually says on the seal, install dry, which is kind of interesting. Now we have gasket here, again with those 2 little pins. So I put gasket maker on the back side, partially just to hold it, but also just for like reassurance. Rear main seal, that's what the rear main seal is.
Oh, you didn't take that part off?
I didn't know it.
That ring around it is on the new one.
Yeah, I didn't know it came with a new ring. Not moving at all. Curious if I'm gonna need like a puller. You smell that gasket?
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's awful. Wear ring they call is on. So this isn't a stock part. This means someone replaced this at one point because originally it just sits like this, and so someone put this wear ring on. I don't have like a Dremel or anything to get this off. I've seen where people were cutting this. So what I did is I drilled a hole in it, and then I took a punch, like a chisel, and kind of chiseled in and got down pretty low, and not low enough to damage this surface. And then I started hitting it to the side, and I was able to break this free. And then I took a pry bar and kind of just went all the way around, just constantly, and worked it off. Now we just need to clean this off real good, and then I'm gonna just kind of like polish it up, sand it up type deal, and then we'll get this top ring on. I'm almost certain the way I did it is not the correct way to do it, but that's how I did it. And if you want to do it another way, go do it on your motor. Okay, so we want to install this dry. Put some Loctite on it actually. The ring is not supposed to spin inside, it's supposed to, the outside is supposed to spin. I'm just dabbling a little Loctite around. I'm just gonna very lightly try to tap this on. doing a really good job of being difficult. Can you hand me that 2x4 right there? Tapping a bunch of dust all over. Go figure that it almost seems like there's a special tool for this. Go figure, Link, figuring it out without a special tool. Rear plate here, and I'm just gonna put it 4 bolts there. And I'm just gonna start cinching this plate on and seating that. Here's like we need to seat that just a bit more on the bottom here. Cool, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now we can get our plate on. So I imagine this piece we can put a little lubie on. Let's look it up. No, I'm gonna put it on dry. Flare out. I was ensuring I wasn't stabbing into that seal. I was past the seal, just gliding around it. So that's the last thing we want to do is replace this seal and puncture a hole in it. So there's 2 locating pins on both sides. Ta-da! Put it like a bead of caulk around. So I went and grabbed my small little torque wrench, and I'm doing these to 9.5 Newton meters.
That's what it says in my book for quarter-inch bolts. It actually doesn't have anything for this.
That's one pretty looking oil pan, babe.
Yup. And it's got an oil pan gasket, which these motors don't come with oil pan gaskets. There's a stud set in all the way across. And then this blue thing here is a aftermarket gasket, which I'm pretty excited about.
I got something tickling my booty. Thank goodness for voiceovers now, right?
No, that's funny.
That's coming. Make sure you get a shot of that bicep. And the leg too. Because that's what's supporting everything.
Yay!
So we got our oil pan gasket. I don't think we filmed any. We struggled quite a bit. I think it's because this gasket maker made it like slick. It says to put gasket maker in the corners, but it doesn't say not to put it everywhere else. So it's like, oh, I'll just put it everywhere else. But I think the issue is because I put it everywhere else, when I tighten the oil pan on, it wants to pull, it pulls the front underneath. It like sucks it in. Same for this side. This is basically the last thing I can do on this until the heads get put together. So we're gonna install this ARP head stud kit. Basically what I'm gonna do is just take my brass brush and I'm gonna go through all the holes where the stud's going and clean out the threads. We have a bunch of washers and bolts and washers and bolts. It was saying for a permanent installation we can use Loctite, which I don't plan on not permanently doing this, fingers crossed. I'm gonna use some Loctite, but we're gonna need to torque this down right away before that Loctite's set, so that way we have proper torque specs. So what I'm actually gonna go ahead and do is just drop all these head studs into place and see how we're looking and making sure we're going the right direction as well. Some of these are flipped around, it appears. So there are shorter ones in here. They're very unnoticeable almost. Some are, I guess, 6 3/4, and then some are 6 1/2. The 6 1/2ers are gonna sit up here, and we're gonna torque these all down to spec, and I mean, these aren't gonna matter. I'm not gonna actually torque these, I'm just gonna go spec. But whenever we do put the heads on, we definitely wanna follow torque spec as far as like starting in order. So we got 65 to start with. I'm actually gonna be a little cheeky here and grab my electric ratchet. So I read back over it, and these studs are supposed to just be hand tight, I guess. Okay, so I was just checking to make sure it all fit before these head studs actually set in. We have enough room for everything and no interferences or all that jazz. So I'm just putting these pulleys back together here. I took it off so I could paint this, and the cool thing is it was probably like 4 days ago, and I totally forgot which order. And so I used this program called Polycam, and I actually did a whole 3D scan of the motor on the engine stand. And so now what I can do is go in and take a little peek where's where. It's not perfect, but now I know which wheel's where. I mean, you could definitely just search this on Google, but this is way cooler in my opinion. Okay, so oh, here it is. This is what I was just looking for. I don't know if that goes there. Fully done, all decorated and nice. Okay, we got this in the mail. Check out my address right there. Now you can stalk me. Yeah, ejector cup seal thingy doodads. Not those at all, actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and slap the head up here, and then we're gonna replace the valve seals, and we're gonna go ahead and start getting everything in. Super light. Easy to move around. Alright, look at that unit. So this is the head. Every single motor, besides rotary motors pretty much, have heads. This is one of the most important parts of a motor. It tells when fuel to come, when air to come, when exhaust to go out, all in this component, as well as oiling everything up. So these right here are what we're replacing. There's a ripped one right here. I don't know how it happened, but basically, see that rip there? Oh, and how it came apart. I don't know how that happened, but basically what that means is oil could fall down into the cylinder and then would just like burn oil. So these are real simple. You grab the top and pull it off. You don't want to go too deep because there's metal pieces in here. So you want to be like maybe 1/4 inch from the top. Perfect. Now I clean this motor with water, and the downfall of that is water and oil are not soluble, so you'll get like water bubbling in all of the places where oil should be. Not a huge deal, you just want to clean it up. So I actually took these to the local car wash and pressure washed them off. Now the reason why I wanted to do these is because how bad would it suck if I went and put all new this, all new that, and then we had leaky valves or leaky valve stems, and then I have to pull stuff back apart. Now you can actually get to these with the motor still in the vehicle, but it's much easier right here on a table. So let me make sure I don't need to put on like sealant or anything. So now I took out injector sleeves, I think they're called. They sit down in here, they're copper. or they're brass sleeves. And I pulled those out, and doing that you ruin them, and then the set I ordered are terribly cast and they don't fit in very good. So I got a set of 8 and I should be able to get 4 out of them. So on the other head, we're just gonna leave them as is. Okay, here is our old exhaust valve. So now the reason why I got new ones is it's pretty pitted in here. So here's the new one, nice and pretty. And I double checked all of the dimensions, make sure they're the same. Now the thing is, the intake valves have this little dot on the bottom, and on the stock ones the exhausts don't. But for some reason on these, the exhausts have another dot. So it's a little dot and a big dot. So we're just gonna have to keep that in mind. We basically know which one's intake. Is you could look at the manual and I'll tell you which one, or you could just trace. This is our intake side facing up, so which means our intake goes here. The exhaust port's right out the bottom where the exhaust manifold goes. And we just put that there. Now what I can do is on the back side here, I can literally just grab onto the valve with a drill and I can spin the valve. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have to grind these, clean them, and then set them. One thing you want to do is you don't want to spin in one direction, you want to spin in both. So you're going to go forward, back. Otherwise you'll get some bad grindy situations going on. I'm going to go ahead and here, before I'm going to put some lube inside of those valve stems. Okay. So I can actually just grab with my fingers, spin it around, so you can hear that. Let's see how we're looking. So basically what we're doing is running this till it's smooth. So you can see how it's grinding that little seat. We're not using the full surface here because these heads are not ground, but in here is. So we can see that. Now I'm gonna go actually check out the manual here, see if it recommends how long I do this for, how much, blah, blah, blah. In my book here, it actually has how to grind down your valves. It says it just like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my valve spring compressor, compress this down. I took the Harbor Freight valve compressor, grounded it down a little bit so I could just put my impact on it. And I'm gonna impact that down. Oops. What fell down was my retainer. I put all of the retainers back inside the valve retainers. Tighten it down a bit. Okay, so we can set this over. And then, you know what, I'm gonna grab my slippery tweezers. There we go. Now I'm seeing something interesting here, is that our heights are different. So I need to figure out what's going on there. Okay, so I'm gonna hold these next to each other. They're exactly the same, our exhaust valves, and our intake valves are close enough where this is weird, and those are properly seated. They have to stick out a certain amount, and that is pretty important as far as everything goes. Otherwise this motor won't run correctly, blah, blah, blah. And I'm gonna actually be double checking that with a couple measurement tools. What's happening is the intake side sticks out further than the exhaust side, and because I put in new exhaust valves but not new intake valves, I was worried that the gap between the two, see where those collars go in there? Right there. I was worried that this distance from here to here were wrong from the old exhaust valves from the new exhaust valves, but it appears like they're correct and they're just different from intake to exhaust, and that's what was tripping me up so hard.
Did you put the motor on the way?
2, 4, 6, 8. I put the wrong ones on the wrong thingy.
You put the exhaust on the intake and the intake on the exhaust?
No, I put all the ones from this head on this head. I'm only 4 in, not a big deal. I mean, it's only 2 actually I need to swap. So that's easy. When I get all those valves in, we'll put the head on, or the head gasket on, and throw the head on, tighten it all down, and then we can put the push rods and the rockers on, and then the injectors in, and the valve covers on, and then, I mean, that's it for one side. We're gonna put this is valve grinding compound. You can find it at your local store that sells things.
Your local valve grinding compound store?
Yes. That's where you can find your local valve grinding compound. You can see this is where the cylinders go off. You can actually see how rusted this cylinder is by these pits. Those are rust pits, which are not good. But this one's within clearance and will be decent. If you go in one direction, apparently it grinds wrong.
Alright.
So 13 more times.
That's wrong.
This is the wrong head.
No.
It's supposed to be. It doesn't actually matter. They're the same thing, except I have to move everything around. Like all these fittings matter.
Can you just pull it off, or do you have to take out all the injectors and stuff?
But I have to take off everything. Oh, that was a good test run.
That's one way to look at it. Now you know exactly how to put it back.
Fuck. God damn it. That's why I was putting those valves in. Because I knew it was that head. So I was doing 2, 4, 6, and 8. So I have to redo the valves too.
This is the closer one, babe. So that should
Right,
be
so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 3, 5, 7. But this head is for the 2, 4, 6, and 8.
So you're gonna have to, because the injector.
But this is supposed to be here. And that's why I was doing it the way I was doing it. Like, that's why I was putting those valves in. God damn it, because that means I have to reassemble an entire head. I have to disassemble literally everything, all the valves and everything on this. And put all of these on that one.
I know. You're not only just redoing it, you're taking it all apart too. It has to happen though.
Sure does.
Sorry, babe.
Bummer. At least I caught it now.
Yeah.
Rather than putting the other one on. And
True.
like, last thought. Shit!
Goes pee over there because his boots are so grimy and oily and dirty. He has to put bags on to walk in the house. So that's his pee corner. Doggies, your daddy messed up. It's the wrong head, and which means it needs to go down there.
Yeah! Okay, we got all, this is all torqued down per this torque sheet here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put the rockers on. So we're gonna start with putting in the push rods. So there's 2 sides to these push rods, and I will show you which is which. So we're gonna go ahead and just, oh Jesus, we're not gonna use that. That left so much lint. There's a copper side and a not copper side. You can literally just see the color, copper, not copper. So before we put any of these in though, I'm going to get some assembly lube. So I wipe them down because they're just sitting on a shelf. And I'm just gonna put assembly lube on the bottom. What'd you do? Honey, it's got a concussion. Just clapped yourself out, huh?
I think my brain hit the front of my skull. Am I okay?
Yeah, just don't go to sleep.
So I should definitely go drive.
So it's really as simple as that. Fun, be safe, have fun. And the nice thing is, if you get the assembly lube in here, it doesn't matter. All it's gonna do is help you out, because everything in here is gonna be covered in oil. And assembly lube's just very high viscosity oil pretty much. So anytime you hear rod knock, this is what rods are. That phrase. Basically, these will bend if your valves will hit your pistons if your timing's off, and then these will bend, and then your motor will self-destruct pretty much. The cool thing is if you hear rod knock and you turn your motor off fast enough, you can fix it by replacing your rods and changing your springs and all that jazz, your cam or whatever the issue is. So we got all of those on, and I'm gonna go ahead and just put assembly lube on top of every single one of them, and then I'm also gonna just put assembly lube on top of the valves. And now we're gonna go, so 1, 3, 5, 7, and I've labeled the rockers. One thing also is I like to put this assembly lube right in there. Assembly lube in there, and then we're just gonna set the rockers down. Now there's a little ball here that, like a cup that it fits in, and then it will screw in. You want your harmonic balancer wheel, which is like the big pulley on the front. You want that notch in it set at 11 o'clock, and that is supposed to create the least interference with your cylinders, I guess. It didn't say if that was, you know, for one side or the other. It just said 11 o'clock for the both. Now I'm sure you could just take oil and do oil on all this stuff, but I decided to get assembly lube so I can feel professional. So of course your cams are going to be, some are going to be open, some are going to be closed. So actually when you go ahead and torque all this stuff down, you're going to be opening some cams, or opening some valves rather. So you are going to have pressure on a few of these bolts when you put them in. So I'm just going to grab an impact and tighten all these down, because these will go to 20 foot-pounds. So we're gonna put in these retainer bolts right now. The long ones go towards the top of the motor. Okay, and then these ones get torqued to 106 foot-pounds, or Newton meters. Okay, so we're gonna take number 1. Remember how we marked these? This collar here is going to need to seat forward, and it'll go over that bolt we just put in, and then you can kind of just pound it in. There's 3. And from what I recall, you kind of just okay, so now you have these retainers. So you're gonna slide the collar back, and then go figure, they'll screw in there. So we're not gonna put the glow plugs in quite yet. I'm gonna go ahead and flip the motor upside down, so we don't have any oil in it yet, except for soaking these injectors in oil and like the assembly lube. So the reason why we're gonna flip it over is to let it sit, and we're gonna try to drain the oil out of the cylinders so we don't hydro lock the motor. Wants to swing because the weight of that head. So I'm just gonna let it sit like that, and I can put my pin back in and everything, and just let it sit for a while, think about its actions, and while we're doing that, I'm gonna put together the other head. Here's how I get these heads on. One finger in the exhaust port, one in the intake, line up the bottom studs. Uh-oh. Okay. Then I can line up the bolt. Drop it on now. Easy. Easy. Not really. That's pretty heavy. So now I just got my tray of bolts and stuff. I'm gonna take some of this and spread it on every thread. This is the stuff that came in our kit. And then again, I'm gonna just put basically everything I want this on, all surfaces that are gonna be touching each other. Just on the head studs, that is, not on everything. Basically, we're just trying to cut down friction so that way I can properly torque these. I seem to always forget that there's head studs out here as well. On the washers, we want it. So I just put on my hands, rub the washer in between my fingers. I was in the way, but I just tilted the motor up. I like working on it vertically like this, like a tabletop. And again, I still have this ultra torque in my fingers, and I'm rubbing it on the bottom side. Get everything. Now we're at the 125 section, and we do a different torque order now. So we go rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this row, then this row, then this row. Woo! The only reason I'm standing on this side is because the shelf with my parts are behind me. Probably be easier to be on the other side, but. So if you don't remember, in a couple videos ago, I redid these rockers. Hey, go lay down! Well, I didn't redo the rockers. I cleaned the rockers, I should say. So basically, I did one at a time, and you can just pull them apart. I think the best thing is with all these, just do one at a time. Pull them off, label them, then pull one apart. They're pretty simple. They're a total of 4 components. You have a ball bearing in there, this main outer, a spring, and then this rocker arm, and slap it in there. And now there are directions. See these little arms here? 2 that way, so they can be put together backwards, but they're a pretty easy fix if you do put them together backwards. I have just a dry one here. This has got motor oil, and I'm just getting motor oil all over it. On all the O-rings, and then I'll just kind of let it drip out a bit. Okay. Push it this way. Again, this collar's gonna come to me. So I think they have a injector pusher. Like, that's the proper way to do it. You push it down, but I'm pretty sure ever since like 1994, whenever these motors came out, people have just been doing it with a dead blow. So you gotta push this collar forward when you put it down. Now come to this side, put in our set screws that hold these retainers back. Our last thing we need to do to this are put in our glow plugs, but I am going to flip it upside down and let it sit for a little bit. So this header's on this side, so what we're gonna do here, we're gonna grab our anti-seize. So this one I left the thingy on. Am I being weird here? What the fuck is going on? Okay, that's this side. Had me worried for a second. That was confusing having it upside down. And you can be pretty liberal with these. Really slather on anti-seize, because let me tell you, these things seize up. So this is high heat, so this is copper anti-seize. I actually have to keep the oil filter off to get this motor in. That's the story of vans. It's gonna actually go this direction. I'm gonna just set it on there. I think there's all the oils out from where the glow plugs are. So I'm gonna go ahead and spin the motor back over. God, not light, I'll tell you that much. As a general rule of thumb, When you do injectors, just put new glow plugs in. They're cheap, why not? So this is the glow plug, can only go one way. You drop it in there, and that's that. They're very, very simple. So they're all gonna be on the right side of the injectors. I think these glow plugs are too long. I'm having some interference issues here. What is this goober hitting on? There's some like debris inside this glow plug hole. And guess what? I'm not taking this goddamn head off again. There's no way I have to take that head off. Could have swore I cleaned out every single hole. So why do we have one extra glow plug? Interesting. I need to figure out what's in this hole. So this is a wire brush tool. So I'm gonna try to just get this in here. Just a bunch of debris in there, which I could have swore I cleaned these out, but I guess not. Man, that had me stressing for a second. Yeah, so I just took this in, which I should probably actually do to every single one. Got a couple things to figure out before we put the motor in. It's very close. These parts here all need to go in after the motor's in because we need to get the engine hoist down into this valley, and that's where all those parts sit, is like around here. That's all going afterwards. We are doing a e-fuel kit, it's called. So we're getting rid of this guy here and this guy here. So this is our manual fuel pump, and then this is our fuel bowl. We're gonna get rid of those, add another filter. So rather than one filter, we'll have two filters that do two different things. And then we'll have more consistent pressures, and it should work better. It's supposed to make these motors like run smoother and be more efficient, as well as in other countries the diesel fuel might be iffy, so that should help us out with that, because we do plan on taking this van to other countries, hopefully, fingers crossed. So what needs to go back on is we need to put the valve covers on, the intake manifolds, and then we're gonna put the high pressure oil pump on, and then that's pretty much it for the motor until it goes into the van. Then we'll put all these parts on once it's in the van.
We didn't film this, but Lance actually just took these off and put oil on the injectors.
But your oil fill only fills oil here and pours oil down that way. So we did it on this side, so this side's not gonna dry start. So we filled that with oil, so that way there's all those parts already lubricated, because it'll take a little while for the motor to start pumping oil around and lubricate everything.
Everybody says thank you, Lance. Everybody says thank you. You did great.
No problem, you little shit stains.
Lance wants to clean the inside of the van before putting the engine back in.
127.
And then there's this here.